I used to like the Ewoks when I was a kid. I was like, and my sister was like, "Oh yeah, they so cute." Like, or the one. Some of them other ones, I don't know. Like, they
Yeah.
had some shit going on with them, but for the main one, like,
Hello, welcome to Your Favorite Movie is Racist. I'm Chris.
I'm Tawny.
I'm Miles.
And we are two blacks and a Mexican here to give our non-expert opinion on movies. This show is all about going back and re-examining the movies that we love and sort of asking ourselves if they hold up in 2020. Some of them hold up better than others. Some of them we literally had to walk away from. And to this point, we are at the last 3 episodes of our first season, and we are going to spend these 3 episodes talking about possibly the biggest franchise in movies, Star Wars. Star Wars started in 1977, created by George Lucas, and has gone on to blow up. I don't need to describe Star Wars.
Yeah, for real.
If you're here, you know what Star Wars is. And what I mean by here is on planet Earth. So let's just get into it. So, well, first I'll say we're going to spend this first episode talking about the original Star Wars trilogy. Star Wars, later retitled A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi. Then we will spend the next 2 episodes talking about the other 2 trilogies and sort of examining them on their own merits. And maybe in the final episode, we'll kind of give some overall thoughts about the whole series. But we are starting with the original trilogy. And before I ask what we love about Star Wars, I need a little bit of I need a promise from y'all. This is particular to Miles.
What's he gonna say?
You don't have any plans to
you can't
roast,
do that.
You don't have any plans to roast these movies to the point where I walk away sad today.
See these notes right here I got?
Oh my god. Oh my god. All right, I need to walk away and sit in prayer for a few minutes.
We all have an affinity. I'm a Star Wars fan, so I'm not a Star Wars hater. So, but I'm gonna keep it a buck about Star Wars. All right, let's be honest.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. All right, I will accept that. What do we love about Star Wars?
I honestly I'm like, oh yeah. Just right now I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna ask me that question. Like, what is what's the specific thing I love? I think it's that it's a big question, and I think just I guess I won't take up too much oxygen here. But there's something to be said for familiar story patterns and archetypes. And I don't want to lionize Joseph Campbell too much because I think he's deeply problematic in a lot of ways. But I just to my little dear American heart, and I am fucking American person who grew up with movies like with American
it's like a weird
red-blooded movies. I know that sounds stupid.
Blacks and a Mexican, but I'm also very American.
Very American.
But and there, sometimes I wish I could walk that back a bit, but no, I think there's an appeal and a power in the archetypes that we honor as a culture, and those very clear archetypes that emerge in the Star Wars, this original, especially trilogy, with the sort of the hero's journey and the wise, the wise person and the rogue and there's all these familiar characters, and they're just such a charming group of actors too. The sort of central characters have such great chemistry. I don't know what this movie would have been like, and it's kind of amazing when you think of how shitty Lucas casted the prequels, the shitty casting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Jumping ahead
no,
a
no,
bit, but okay.
I know, and sorry, I didn't, but like in contrast, like Leia's great and Han's great and Luke's
Yeah.
great and they're all great. Like and they work together, and I guess that's what I like. Like that's it, and it's very simple. Like I don't have anything super deep to say here. It's just fun. It's adventure. It's familiar archetypes. And it's like space and shit.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Definitely space and shit. Like, I mean, just like, I don't know even what to even say about like a movie like this that's this big. It's just like in the film iconography, like this is one of those movies, right? Like, I remember knowing that this thing that kind of like, I guess, ruined it is like, I've known about Star Wars before I even seen Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like it was just kind of existing like in my world as a child, like, and I hadn't even seen it. We were saying like, Luke, I'm your father, and I didn't even know what the hell that was. We just knew it was related to this movie, and then when we finally saw it as a kid, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7, 6, 7, I have no clue, but we were like saying that before we even knew what that even was. And I mean, this film like gave birth to maybe the coolest weapon ever to exist ever in anything. Like, who doesn't want a lightsaber? Like, if I could like buy a functioning lightsaber right now, like,
how much would you pay for a functioning lightsaber?
I'd make payments on it. I'd make installment
layaway lightsaber.
It's like a car note, like a good 5-6 years. Yeah,
because I feel like it would be like $200-$300 a month to like lease that or whatever. Like, get it?
I'm picturing myself. My grandma used to always put stuff on layaway at Kmart and be standing in that fucking line.
I know, me too.
It was in like the hardware. The line was in like the hardware section. And I'd be standing there. But fucking just, I imagine myself
to get my lightsaber out from Kmart. I feel like that was what. Yeah. I feel like if they did have that, it would be like Apple would have like the legit one or whatever, and then there'd be like these other like sub companies making the not as good version of the shit. But now like it's just like I think the thing that's most impressive about this movie specifically, or there's this franchise. Well, no, I'll say the first three. I won't go that far, but just these first three specifically. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about the film itself, about balance and stuff like that. And like, ironically, like in our world, the person making the movie is doing a phenomenal balancing act, because this shit should not work. This should not work at all. Like, this is very out there. It's very ambitious.
Yeah.
But it's successful. Like, you watch the first three movies. I mean, I remember as a kid, like Return of the Jedi was like my favorite as a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell I was thinking like now, but
Return of the Jedi. Yeah, no, that was the first one I ever saw because I was
me too.
79, you know.
That was my favorite one. Like for the longest. I feel differently now, obviously, but like it just shouldn't work. Like this should be wrong. Like this should be a failure. This whole entire thing should be a bomb, and it's not. It's a complete hit. It's successful. Like it's like, dude, how do you go from having like a scene where there's a character wondering about his place in the universe and like longing for something, you know, great, and then go to the next movie where it's like, all right, we're gonna have you flipping through a swamp jungle with a Muppet on your back doing flips. Like, okay, no, pass. Like, I'm not interested in that. Like, it shouldn't work. Like, it's so many things that like it's piecing together, and just the lore of this movie. This is like a masterclass in like world building.
Yeah,
like it's flawed as hell. Like, there's a bunch of shit that I have issues with it. I don't even think makes sense, but the amount of like just conceptual like just ideas that have been like created here, and how much like is, you know, other things have taken from this. Like it's just dope. Like I don't even know what to say. It's hard to even sum up everything about Star Wars. It is literally like, I don't think it's like, if I'm talking about the films in general, I don't think they're the best films at all, but these are some of the most important movies in American cinema, just period. It has to be top 10
yeah,
for that reason. Like, like outside of technical shit. Like it's just pure spectacle. These have to be
Mhm.
like in that like top movies
Yeah.
in like American like film. Like it's just it's fun. Like it's a fun like it's stupid though. I'm gonna be real. Like it's a lot of stupid shit, but it's like, man, I like this. I enjoy this. It's like it's
That's yeah, like these movies like are what introduced me to like storytelling and like really kind of the hero's journey, yes, Kurosawa, yes, like we can get into that. We'll get into that later probably, but Lucas was pulling from a lot of different places, but what came out of it, man, is I I feel like a kid again every time I watch these movies because it's just like pure space fantasy. It gets mislabeled science fiction. I don't.
it's not science
It's
fiction.
space fantasy. There's magic
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Yeah, like if you look at it in the context of the story that's being told, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, but it's like the 12-year-old me who Lucas was speaking to, it all is fine. And it actually, I remember the very first story I ever wrote was what I thought happened, was me writing what I thought happened after Return of the Jedi. And I was writing a whole thing about like Luke continuing like to get stronger as a Jedi, and he went back to Dagobah. Like I had a whole thing. I still remember this. Like I was like 8, I want to say. And writing it on this old like computer that my mom like didn't do anything with. It was one of those weird like old those computers. And
word processor.
Yeah, exactly. Word processor, like the blue screen.
Yeah. Like not a computer.
Not a computer. The computer, the printer, it printed out the paper with the little holes.
Yeah. My mom had that same thing.
Yeah. That's what I was writing my first story on. And like
I had a fucking typewriter, so
I had a typewriter. Yeah. I actually okay, not to get off track. I like in the 90s, like my mom like she liked a lot of like antique stuff. So like we had like black and white TVs and old, like we just had like a lot of antique stuff, and she had like an old ass typewriter. And like I remember in the 90s, like everybody would be going to the library to like type their papers, and I'd be like using like a typewriter and shit like to type papers. like what the hell, man?
I mean, that's the thing. Like you create this, George Lucas had the dream of a kid.
A lot of this stuff should not work, but like you said, the kid in you watching it is like, but I like this.
They're almost, I mean, they're sort of mythological figures. Like and I always I always think about this, like we're so obsessed in this country in our popular entertainment with superheroes and people who have special powers. And it's like, we're a young country, like we don't have a mythology that, is thousands of years old to draw on in terms of, understanding what we are. And I feel like that's what Star Wars did for people. Like it gave, I actually wrote a paper about this when I was in college, my freshman year. My writing class, like all the writing class that all freshmen have to take. I wrote a paper on sort of the iconic, what's the word I'm looking for? Like how iconic Star Wars is and how it sort of gave us a mythology. And I think that's so
dope. Like that, just that alone, it makes it is impressive because, like you said, I mean, plenty of civilizations have their own mythology and stories that they tell, and the stories aren't true, and the stories are like fantastical and like these large exaggerations of like actual life. But that's the point. It's like there's a message in there, but we use these heroes or these characters,
these larger than life
exactly
figures.
to tell these very human stories.
Well, to I think to indicate like what it is that we as a group of people find important and valuable. And if you look, if you watch these movies, it's like loyalty to friends, loyalty to family, freedom from oppression. Like there's all these, like it's just encoded in there, and the villains fucking speak with British accents, like that's not accidental. I mean, especially in this, the original trilogy.
It is and George Lucas has talked about how he was a kid in the 60s making this like kind of coming up in this era of Vietnam and all that, and he was talking about how that's what was in his brain when he was like putting all these pieces together, was like because someone was saying like they're in a different context, they would be the terrorists, the rebels, the and he's like, yeah, or they could be the Viet Cong. Like he's like, in that scenario, we were the empire, and the others are the those scenarios where the small band of rebels against this monolith, this empire. He was saying some radically political stuff through this crazy kid's space adventure, and like saying something that could be construed as anti-American, and Americans were eating it up. And you got to give some props to that. And
that's true.
Yeah, and John Williams. I just got to say that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible. Easily, like there's every time I watch like A New Hope, that scene always like works for me. Like right after he's talking to his uncle, and the
destiny theme.
He's got too much of his father in him, and he goes out there. That scene is so good. It's just so good. Like I love. That's literally my favorite. Like I know people love the Star Wars theme, and that theme is iconic in itself. Like, that is my favorite music in this.
That's
series.
The one.
That's the one. Whenever
that's
they
the
play
heaviest
that,
one.
that's the one.
Yeah. I mean, they knew it, and I think that emotionally resonates with a lot. I mean, that's us as kids. You know what I mean? Like dreaming about what you want to be, wanting to be something, like special. And the fact that he had to work with so many things. They talked about how torturous that desert was, and like how horrible some of the conditions were that they were shooting in. And some of the challenges of working with practical, puppets and like all that kind of stuff. Like the fact that those work. And actually, when I went back to watch these, I got those despecialized editions. Have you ever seen those? And it's basically like the
one without all the terrible
without all the yes.
I watched the ones with it, and it fucks it up.
Yeah, it fucks it
severely.
No, I was watching Return of the Jedi because I have Disney Plus, so everything is on there.
Man.
No, I was watching Return of the Jedi, and like my Facebook post is like, all right, which is the most like fucking Frem de Shaman inducing scene of the Lucas re-releases? That Sice Noodles scene where like she's singing and then they add all that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
The Jedi Rock song.
I'm like, and they honestly, the Sarlacc did not need to be animated.
Yeah,
like,
what was the point of it?
There was nothing to be gained. Like, it was more scary when it was just a fucking hole.
Right. Here's the thing about Lucas, and what I admire about Lucas is that he's very openly not like a great storyteller, in his own right. He's not a great script writer, and he's not.
Yeah, he's not.
What he's great at is innovation, and that was what he was doing, and that's what makes those special. Is like he was always trying to innovate, and he was always. And we'll get into that when we get into the sequel trilogy. But part of his issues with the sequel trilogy, I agree with, which is that. When you're not moving it forward and doing something new, that drives him crazy. And so you can see it in the animatronics. You can see it in the effects. I mean, I watched this despecialized version that goes back, and I haven't watched that version like since I was a kid. I was amazed at how much of the things there were scenes in Empire in particular that I thought he had upgraded and added stuff to that were there in the original movie, and the effects. I'm like, how did he do this? Like, I didn't realize this. I just assumed. I was like, oh, this must be a CGI thing he added. And then I see that, like that whole like meteor shot or the asteroid field chase. That's completely the way it always was. And I'm like, that's what it always like. I just in my head.
Well,
I'm
that's what makes those re-releases so goofy. Like
Yeah.
they didn't add anything. They didn't those movies never needed any of that.
Yeah.
It messes it up because like there's a charm to like watching these older films and seeing like the craft, like forgotten crafts that people don't use. Like people don't use stop motion really. There's something charming about like watching this practical way of creating this effect in that time.
What's racist about the original Star Wars trilogy?
As the eponymous Mexican in this group, I just pointed out that Chewbacca's Mexican, and I mean, honestly, I mean, obviously, I don't really literally believe that, but I think there's something to be said for speciesism in this movie and probably in movies like it, where you sort of like have entire races that are assigned certain personality, attributes, like the Jawas. They're all like shrieking in foreign tongues in the desert.
Yep.
And and they all are trying to cheat you out of your shit and steal shit. And the Sand People, who no one can understand. And like Chewie, who no one can understand except for Han for whatever reason, but who's always kind of there. Like there's just this strain of that, and that's always sort of, I had suggested a while back doing is Lord of the Rings racist for similar reasons, because I think there literally like there are different races, and the races are assigned personality attributes based on what they are, like based on what race they are, and I think that's present in Star Wars. So,
especially with a dearth of any people of color anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's no, and that's the thing that like it really makes them feel like the other, because there's no actual like other races in there. It's like there's like barely any black people at all. I mean, there's Lando.
Not till the second movie.
And, that's right? The second movie.
And I have thoughts on Lando.
Yeah. But yeah, it is like it's clearly like it's interesting is what I'll say. It's like, okay, this entire group of people, like you said, is assigned this behavioral like traits. Like they all talk like this. They're all like, and it ironically mirrors like groups in real life that live similarly in these terrains or like this type of environment. It's just like, okay, here we go. I mean, this is the same person that, is behind Indiana Jones, which, we talked about that. It is like kind of the perception of what, the otherism, like of these other cultures. Everybody else is normal that looks like this. Everybody that doesn't look like this is like, well, they're aliens, they're creatures and shit. Like there's it's us, like regular people, and then there's aliens, like, which is
regular
again
people means white people.
Exactly. And it's like it's odd, it's strange, especially when you go back and watch like now. And I mean, it gets worse when you get to the
oh my gosh,
the prequels. But like, I mean, even here though, it's pretty glaring. It's like, okay. I mean, the galaxy. So you guys are traveling throughout the galaxy. You saying? This ain't even like one planet.
And I'm pretty sure the Jawas and the Ewoks have the exact same language and voices. Like they have the same.
There's some strong similarities. Yeah. Yeah,
like the sounds are the same. They use like the same kind of sounds. They were like, I was reading like the Wookiees were supposed to sort of be the primitive, culture, and then they ended up using Chewbacca for all the movies, and so they made the Ewoks, and they were supposed to be these like primitive tribal people.
Yeah.
Who. And that's kind of it's troubling. Yeah. Like when they're worshiping C-3PO and they're and I'm like, I feel a little uncomfortable about this.
Yeah, that's a weird ass scene. Like in general, like I mean that whole Ewok thing. I used to like the Ewoks when I was a kid. I was like, and my sister was like, oh yeah, they're so cute. Like, or the one, some of them other ones, I don't know. Like they had some shit going on with them, but. For the main one, like the main one was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like him, like he's cool, like, and then, but it's like, what is, it's like, what is going on in this, like, what is happening right now?
Yeah,
it's like, every civilization that's not white is primitive. Like,
Yeah.
it's like all the like where Luke comes from is like he's like not rich. They're definitely like middle class, like
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
below maybe, I don't know, but they still have like some sophistication about them, like as far as like how they operate. They're like just blue collar, but
Yeah.
there's a sophistication still there. And then obviously when you're in the presence of all of
Mhm.
what's his name, Grand damn,
Grand
I
Moff.
can't think of his
Grand
Grand
Moff
Moff.
Tarkin.
I mean, these are all again highly sophisticated people here. Like, like none of them are like
British
primitive. Yeah,
British
British
people.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just interesting that is always the take on people. The
Yeah.
otherism take is like, well, anybody that doesn't look like this tends to be
But
more
yeah,
primitive. Yeah.
and Luke's like a working class, farm boy and
Right.
the evil Brit. But then we also have like
Yeah.
the fucking Jawas who no one understand. I mean, they understand. We can't understand them. They're speaking gibberish,
Right.
for all intents and purposes. And that's, like this whole race of people has this one personality attribute is troubling.
Yeah, it feels like I think what it is too is like you have, interestingly, Lucas seems to be trying to take an anti-colonialism stance in this series, but also is kind of like it's a perfect example of the well-meaning white person thing,
Yeah.
where like
Yeah.
you just totally blind to your own, like, because like like you got the British white people, the Nazi-ish vibe of them, sort of coming into places in empire, literally taking over planets, and the idea that we need to fight that not to be the case, and that people should be liberated and free. Great concept. So why is this group over here like, why is everybody not as smart as our white
Why are all the
English
humans
speaking
white?
heroes? Why does everyone look the same? And why is we didn't get until later the intelligent Twi'leks and like the other alien races besides Chewbacca, and Chewbacca wasn't even presented as like brilliant. I mean, it was kind of like, oh yeah, he's clearly like generally a pretty smart character, but he was kind of it as far as non-human characters.
Chewbacca's the most competent person in all of these movies.
Right.
Like, who's more competent? Like, who's more reliable in terms of you're like going to be like, you need to go do this? Who's
who the only
Chewbacca,
other
like
the only
who
other
else?
one is the only woman in these movies. It's Leia.
Yeah.
Leia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leia and
She's
Chewbacca,
super,
like,
especially
let
in the
them be in
first,
charge.
especially in the first one. Like she's like taking, like she doesn't even need help. Damn near, like in the first one, like she's doing everything that, like they kind of have her be the damsel in distress, like initially, and then once they get there, she's like, oh damn, I just needed somebody to unlock that door for me, and it's like, it's like she kind of takes over, and again, she is the more competent one,
great.
where she's like, yeah, it's like, do y'all know how to rescue somebody? Like, what are y'all doing? Like, yeah, I'm making a plan, like on the spot. Like, she's like figuring out how to get out of this situation.
Did you have a plan?
Right.
Yeah. Like, did you?
My wife has a Leia, one of those 6 scale figures that I got her in her office, and it's she was an icon, and like, but you got to note the severe lack of, I mean, it's just white men everywhere. Aliens that don't speak English, English being a thing, and then English people everywhere, and so that's one piece of it, and that could all be none of that. I mean, we should probably note that none of this feels insidious or intentionally harmful. Like we just said, that there was probably good intent behind what the story is meant to be, but there's just a clear blind spot and a clear kind of, this is from the perspective of a white guy who, and a bunch of other white people who probably, this is the story they wanted to tell. And from their lens, that's the world.
Yeah. And I mean, like in Hollywood specifically too, at that time, it's like that is the world. Like, for them. Like, I mean, yeah, most
What
of
movies were.
yeah, as the movies were, it's like most of the people that were cast, they're not going to cast a black lead. There's not going to be a ton of black. There's no black people in space. Black people don't go to there. Yeah, we're not in space.
That's how you know you're actually. That's how you. Yeah, that's how you know you're looking at actual fantasy as opposed to science fiction. Because in science fiction, like
Yeah,
there's way more people of color. Like I want to say, like when I think about like big science fiction, intellectual properties, like that's people of color like have their foot in the door, in science fiction. Fantasy, no,
genre.
because science fiction is riffing on things that are not currently like science. There's some science fiction that has like come to fruition, like where we do live like that now, kind of. Like where there's films in the past that have, I guess you could say, predicted the way that we might live in the future. So science fiction is it's fiction when it's maybe created, but it's there's a level of like possibility, I suppose. When you think about science fiction, it's like it could get like this.
Yeah,
this could happen. Fantasy is just like this is never going to happen.
I mean it's Eastern mysticism and spiritualism and
spiritualism.
It's the hidden fortress. He references Kurosawa more than Joseph Campbell, even though like when he talks about these movies, and I think there's a pride that he takes in having like pulled from Kurosawa, which is funny because Kurosawa is also where a lot of our spaghetti westerns were born too. And so there's this thing of like those themes, those Eastern kind of themes, and those, because Kurosawa was like super like what's the word? He was a patriot for Japan. He made like propaganda films at first, like some of his earlier stuff. And so like he was leaning into like everything that he saw in his identity and who he was. But then all these white guys from America just started pulling it and being like, that's cool, let's do that. Okay. And there's something that gets lost in the translation, right? Like there's a piece of that feels like that. Let's talk about Lando. So
okay,
I grew up really conflicted about Lando. And it's because Lando to me is the coolest looking character. He shows up in a cape. You know what I'm saying? And like that wavy curl thing going on. And you just like, man, who is this brother? You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's such a cool character. And Billy D. Williams was like a sex symbol, And so like his casting was very intentional. His character, he played the part perfectly. Even though he for some reason could not pronounce anybody's name correctly. And they just rolled with that. Han.
They're like, just let him.
But so when he kind of betrays the group, and character wise and story wise, you understand kind of what's going on there, but as a kid you don't, because that's kind of like, you know what I mean, like it's played pretty subtly in the script about the Empire kind of strong arming him and stuff like that. But it just sucked, man. Like I was just like, dang, like the one character that looks like me is just not very admirable. And he's kind of like, and they've you as you get older, you realize him and Han Solo are very similar, and they have Han Solo probably in roles reversed would have been similar, right? Before he had his growth arc. But like, that's not what happens. It's like Billy, Lando, the cool black guy, shows up, and of course he also betrays them. You know what I'm saying? And
Lando,
like,
the cool black guy,
of course. And like, and then he kind of just is sort of. He has obviously a significant role in Return of the Jedi, and actually being the one to help blow up the Death Star.
They do.
Right. Totally. And I think if you're looking at like who are the admirable mythological archetypes, like he's more in line of like he's like a trickster, maybe. Like if you're thinking in terms of mythology. But this is what I think, and I was actually rewatching Lando because I was like, what was my my dad, for whatever reason, how like there's celebrities you hate like for no discernible reason, for whatever reason, like that's. For whatever reason, Billy D. Williams, like my dad hates him. I don't know why. Yeah. Like it's not rational. Yeah. Like, there's nothing about it that's based on anything. Yes. Right, and I have that too, but it's just random.
I don't like his
Billy
face.
D. Williams. Why?
Yeah.
But but I went and I watched it and I was like, okay, he comes out and he's like immediately he's slick, you know, he's a fast talker. He's not, you could tell he's not being on, he's like a salesman. He comes across like, well, what do we have here? And he's like hitting on Leia
trying to get your panties
and I'm like,
shit,
yeah, this is a little problematic. It's a little bit like, this is the one black guy we get, and this is like the character is like a shyster or like a used car salesman or like a con.
This is
playing
this
to
is
that,
so weird.
like
That
playing
this
to
character
that.
is like this, like that he is like not Dolomite, but just like that type of character where it's like,
and he talks like he's in the 70s,
like in space, like he's like, who is this cool? Like, who are you talking to this way that would be this level? You gotta have somebody else to talk to that cool, like
in space.
Like, hey,
he just stands out because he's the only black dude and he talks like a black dude in the 70s. It's just like But I do feel like I you know, that's not the kind of thing I picked up on as a kid. What I picked up on was like, you know, like even when the first time I watched my wife had never seen Star Wars when we were dating, and so Revenge of the Sith was about to come out, and so I introduced her to all the Star Wars movies, and so we watched all of them, and she couldn't stand Lando and never got back on board with him even when he had his redemption, because she's just like, oh, this guy's like, you know, he's a shyster, he's like a, you know, like forget him. Like she was so mad when he sold him out that she just doesn't trust, you know, like it's just like,
my wife just seemed like a trifling ass baby daddy and shit. Like he just don't like. It's just like you could just tell. It's like, oh, I know this dude. Like,
how many kids you got, bro?
Yeah, how many kids you got? Like,
I feel maybe because I don't have to carry the weight of that, like being, like that, like that's a reflection of myself. Like I didn't hate him that much. Like when he was like, they fucking got here, I didn't have a choice. They were gonna kill me. Yeah. Like, what would you do, motherfucker? Like, I'm a pragmatist. Like, and I always say this to people. Like, I'm pretty pragmatic human being. Like, and I like if you're doing something and they're like, I get it. Like, and I think that's actually the most realistic thing. Like. He was like, they got here. They were like, we're going to fucking shoot you in the face unless you do this. You're going to do it. And then maybe you help them later. And he does immediately help them escape. Yeah. He helps Leia and Chewbacca escape immediately. And then he joins the rebellion. So I'm just like, I forgive him completely. Like, I don't. But again, like, how does that scan?
And that
he's the only black character?
It is the most realistic
is the other piece
in
of
a movie where everyone else has hero arcs, kind of like Han
Mm-hmm.
Solo never, like the most kind of shicey thing Han Solo ever does is like act like he's not going to join the fight at the end of
what you know,
and then he does.
Like, whereas, you're waiting for him to do
He doesn't actively do anything
sabotage. He doesn't sabotage anything. He just he does the same thing that Luke does initially, where the reluctant hero, where it's like, well, I don't necessarily want to be a hero. I just want to leave here. I just want to leave Tatooine. Like, I don't want to be a hero necessarily, but he eventually accepts it. And Han does the same thing, and it's like, okay, well that's not that bad. They don't sabotage anybody though. Like, because as much as Han like spends the first movie not really wanting to be, he's only in it for the money. Like he feels like he could make some money off of this. Like, all right, I'll go if I'm gonna get rewarded for this. Like he stays the entire time, and then he ends up coming in at the end to help out, like to help Luke, like in the first one. So there's not enough there to like hate him, to dislike him. You understand, like, well, I mean, this is not his mission. This is not what he was here for. Like, you came, you found me, you needed a ship, like.
And you also you just know that he's gonna come back. Like that's just written it. Like that's something that we don't. And again, that's that comforting thing of like a pattern. Like we know fucking Han Solo is gonna show up at the end. Like there's not even a question. And Lando is, as the only black character, like the only guy who's living in reality, like our reality. Like Lando is our reality. And everybody else is existing as like these mythological figures, even though they still talk like they're in the 70s.
It's not satisfying, like either. Like by Jedi when he's helping them. And I mean, he tries to apologize or whatever and do something in Empire, but I mean, they not even rolling. They're like, man, get this dude out of here, man. Now you want to help everybody, like. So they even the characters are not even on board with him, like in Empire when he tries to, yeah, they're not going. I mean,
Chewie,
even
yeah,
Leia
Chewie
to
for
an extent
sure
is like, oh, not
doesn't
like
trust him.
we don't trust you, which
Mhm.
makes sense. I wouldn't trust him either.
I was gonna say, and they kind of took like, it's like that whole thing that James Baldwin talked about of the kind of the neutering and desexualization of the black sex symbols. Like he comes in like this, but they sort of slowly kind of, if you look at when Chewie chokes him and all that stuff, and like he betrays them, and like he doesn't have a big heroic act. He kind of helps them escape, but imagine like Han Solo has a big heroic act where he sweeps in and actually shoots Darth Vader's ship. Like that's amazing and awesome. Like, what's Lando's big heroic act? Well, it comes in the next movie, kinda. But then even the Jabba's palace scene, I always think like that's to me when I was off board with like
Yeah, I
actually
wasn't with
thinking
him.
Lando was cool at all was when
Yeah,
he get dragged into the Sarlacc pit. He's like, "Whoa!" And he
yeah,
becomes this kind of like almost like
Yeah.
goofy, it's just like you know what I mean? He doesn't get any moments.
Yeah.
Han Solo accidentally kills Boba Fett. Like
yeah.
literally, like you could have had Lando actively do that or something. And like, and when he blows up the Death Star, that feels like a group effort with Wedge and the other characters and everything going on. And so you could say, yeah, that's his big moment, but it doesn't. It's like you said,
It's not. He's contributing.
Of it being a redemptive thing. It's just kind of accepted that he's, and like when Han Solo returns from, the biggest not the biggest, but one inconsistency is that like Han Solo
Not the
last
biggest.
time he saw Lando, he punched him in the face and then got frozen. And he wakes up and he sees Lando and he's just like, "Hey, what's up? Yeah, you can have my ship." It's like,
yeah, he don't even know like what? Like the last time I saw you, it was a problem. Like now we good. Like yeah.
which is fine.
Uh,
We don't need another scene of, hey, what happened there? Like that's not Star Wars, but like it's just that, yeah, Lando's not an important enough character to get an actual arc or anything.
Yeah, he and he feels
Mhm.
very much tacked on. Tacked on as a character and tacked on in response to the lack of diversity in the original movie.
So we still gotta rate this. So what the original Star Wars trilogy. We've talked about the issues we have with it. I think y'all know where I'm gonna go with this, but how do we rate the original Star Wars trilogy?
I think it's still a classic. I think I don't I'm barely bothered, and maybe I should be more bothered.
Like I said, with this one, it's not even as egregious to me in these original ones. Like there's stuff there, but if you're into, man, it's just such a dope like universe, like where you have to watch these.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
you can't not watch these ones. So it's like if you're going to get into the universe at all, like these are the ones you have to, and you have to watch it in this order because it makes no sense if you watch 1, 2, 3 first.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense, like because it like literally the first Star Wars, it explains the Force, what it is. It explains, because you just jump right in 1, 2, 3. You're like, what is going on? Like you understand the universe from Star Wars: A New Hope. So it's like, dude, yes, watch this. Like, yeah, go watch this. Like, understand that. Yo, listen, there's no black people. If you're looking for some black people in here, look hard, because you're not gonna find, you're not gonna find a lot of them. But I mean, the one black character in there is a pimp. So I mean, I guess that's at least he gets women. I guess I don't know. Like, I mean, there's like that saving grace, I guess, for that character. But yeah, but 100%. Like I always watch this. My kids love Star Wars, or my daughter does. My son, like, again, my son is like me. He hasn't really watched Star Wars really like that.
Yeah.
But he knows all about it. He has lightsabers. He knows who Darth Vader is. He knows who the characters are, and he's never seen it. Like that's how like significant like Star Wars is. So it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna stop watching this. Like it's dope. Like they would have to like really they had to do some wild shit to make me just like be like, all right, I'm not watching this no more. like it would have to be crazy.
No, I mean, yeah, same. Like this is my jam. Like Empire Strikes Back is literally my favorite movie. Period. Like there's movies that I think are better. There's like probably 50 to 100 movies that I think are better, but Empire is my favorite movie of all time. And like I will go back and watch it. And like every single time, like line for line, recite the dialogue, get chills at all the same moments. It's just, yeah, it's the movie I think of when I think of movies that I love. And my go-to answer when somebody asks me that, my kids like love Star Wars to the point where like Star Wars is the only thing where I could say, hey, we're watching Star Wars tonight, and literally no one would disagree and say, nah, let's watch something else. It's always, the argument's always which Star Wars movie to watch, you know? It's like, you know, everybody has their favorite, and most of them are within that original trilogy because it's just, yeah, it's great stuff George Lucas made for kids, and we fell in love with it as kids and still are. So yeah, that's how we feel about Star Wars. If you feel differently, if these issues kind of that we've brought up or that we haven't brought up resonate with you in some kind of way, you want to join the conversation, please leave a comment, share this episode, and enjoy the conversation. Next week, we're going to talk about the prequel trilogy. We feel slightly different about it. So we're super excited. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.